Okay. Part 3. Errors. Chapter 2. The strongest source of knowledge about the student remains the student herself. And tapping into that knowledge is not so difficult. Kids love to tell us about themselves, and we can structure multiple opportunities for them to do so. I've always asked children to draw their families. For example, young children tend to draw little tadpole creatures, while older youngsters work hard to represent with greater accuracy. But in either case, that they reveal a lot. This family includes a dog, a grandmother, and Aunt Helen. This family has grown-up children and in-laws, nieces and nephews. This family has a large figure who is mom and a tiny little dad in the corner of the page. This family visits their father in prison. We might do autobiographical sketches like I Am Aaron poem described earlier. The children might draw or write about the worst thing they ever ate, or the scariest moment of their lives, or the sweetest person they ever knew, or their best friend. If we're reading a story and a character does something courageous or cowardly, generous or small, we will almost certainly take the time to describe when some of us saw someone be generous or cowardly. Or when we ourselves were. We might move toward deeper autobiographical writing, family trees, or keeping journals or diaries. One useful homework assignment I have regularly given to preschoolers and college students alike is to have them research their first names. How did you come to have your name? What was the thought behind it? Who gave it to you? Every name has a story, even if only that it sounded nice or was inventive and one of a kind. I have pursued names to the Bible and to the Quran, to Russia, China, Brazil, and Puerto Rico, to a grandmother, a great uncle, and a dead cousin, to Eugene Debs, Malcolm X, and Abraham Lincoln. In one kindergarten class, we had a Marcus from Marcus Garvey, a Solomon from the Old Testament, and a Lolita from Lolita LeBron. We also had a Veronica because my dad loves Archie comics and always said if he had a girl, he'd name her Veronica. She brought in some comics so we could understand her name better. Names are powerful for individuals, and they often have powerful and interesting stories worked up in them as well. When we discuss culture in class, I have asked students to bring in a cultural artifact from home. Again, a world of importance opens up religious symbols, a book, military, discharge papers, photographs, utensils, ornaments, something from the old country, something from long ago. Experiences become validated, and children become more notable and intelligible to themselves and to others, stronger, more able. I tell students that I'll teach them interviewing techniques, and then I show them how to use a tape recorder and how to plan an interview. I set them to interviewing each other for practice, and with questions like, what's the best thing about school? What do you want to do in class that you never get to do? This can lead to a wonderful flights of fancy. I never get to skydive or to insights about particular kids or to gaps in my own teaching. I never get to build with wood here. We don't go outside enough. When teachers value their children's experiences and opinions, children begin to think more openly, and we begin to see them differently. Later, we will move to interviewing other children in the school, parents, brothers and sisters, grandparents, neighbors, community residents. We might develop a research project of general interest, and interviewing will take on new importance. I'm feeling like we need to interview people. I like developing a treasure hunt with children based on what I know and on what seems worthwhile for me and others to know. In this treasure hunt, we are searching for people, not things. Find someone whose mom sings in a choir. Find someone who has a disabled family member and find out something the family learned from this experience. Find someone who has an old person living at home and find out what the best part of that experience is. This kind of activity, too, can affirm the learner and can make each child more whole, more recognizable and well-defined, more fully present in the classroom. I have almost always begun the year by asking students to think about their own learning agendas. What do you want to do this year? What do you hope to get out of it? What's kindergarten or 8th grade going to be like? Young children are quick to answer. I'm going to play with my friends. I want to learn to spell. Mom says I'm going to learn to read. These responses help me focus. I must remember the importance of play and friendship, but also the expectation of becoming a more competent speller. Older kids have been in school too long, and their answers come more slowly. What do you want me to do? This is the response of the good student. Others might say they just want to survive another year. Seriously pursuing a child's goals in school can nonetheless be a helpful guide to teaching. So, students' goals. Interesting. The point in all of this is to create a range of ways for children to tell us about themselves, to become more whole and more fully alive in the classroom. No single activity will be powerful for everyone. No single idea will tell the whole of it. But by letting the child's schoolwork become an aid in the teacher's investigation of children, everyone benefits. The school experience can then become stronger and deeper. A useful approach to child observation was developed by the Prospect School in North Bennington, Vermont. Pat Carini and her colleagues created an impressive archive and research center where they have collected the work of hundreds of children over many years. They have documented the school lives of children, and they have also created a compelling method of gathering information and creating rich, detailed portraits of individual children. Because the purpose of the prospect approach is to develop a thick description of the complex choreography of learning, to really see the whole child as fully as possible in order to sustain and deepen the school experience for that child, there is an effort to make descriptions specific, concrete, and particular, and to avoid generalizations, conclusions, and jargon of any kind. The goal is to build on a child's strengths, abilities, and interests, and to support the teacher's efforts to create a classroom culture and structure that can better nurture and challenge the particular learner and, by extension, all learners. The observation, recording, presentation, and recommendations at Prospect are assumed to be dynamic, changing, and in the service of that often noted ongoing teacher inquiry. Given all the knowledge and information I now have, how shall I teach the student? The approach at Prospect centers around a staff review of a child. This requires a group of teachers working together optimally in the school, but sometimes in a support group of teachers from several schools. The staff review contributes to teacher growth and development by creating a formal and regular focus on children. It helps us keep our attention on our shared interests and commitment. We learn a lot about one another when we talk together about children. We build collegiality and support around the central purpose of our professional lives, student learning. Staff review allows teachers to become more critical, more invested, and more intellectually alive to the complexity of teaching. Staff review can be seen as a child-centered approach to staff development. The staff review requires a teacher to gather work samples, anecdotal records, observational data, impressions, and artifacts of a student, and to develop an initial presenting description. The teacher attempts to describe the child through multiple perspectives, including the child's physical presence, stance in the world, gestures, posture, and energy, the child's temperament, disposition, affect, expressiveness, emotional range, and intensity, the child's attachments, commitments, and relationships with other children and adults, the child's interests and involvement in activities, the child's modes of approach and interest in formal learning, and the child's areas of greatest strength and greatest vulnerability. Wrestling with these areas, attempting to uncover and present something meaningful about each is a beginning. I think that's like really great, a great like assignment, like how he wrote that information about the one child early in the chapter. This is what he did. And that's how, like, you could picture her in your mind. What was her name anyway? Right? I'm thinking about the little girl. He did it with Jose and Abdul too, but Ashley. All right. So here is how David Carroll and Pat Carini present a youngster at Prospect. Sid, a pseudonym, so they changed their name for confidentiality, is a tall, long-limbed 9-year-old with an insistent voice and noticeably awkward movements. When he first entered the Prospect School as an 8-year-old, his tendency to spread out, oblivious of both body and belongings, frequently irritated his fellow students. He bumped into them, jarred them with loud noises, or disturbed their work. His lack of self-awareness put people off. Although he slowly gained a place among the other children, it took considerable mediating on the part of his teacher for him to gain acceptance from the group. Sid's responses were puzzling. His initial reaction to the conflict his behavior provoked was often panic and denial. Efforts to encourage greater self-consciousness and responsibility met with meager success. Yet his face would light up with wonder when an idea caught his interest. His full attention was captured by anything mysterious, a problem requiring analysis or connections to be found among an array of elements. An avid, if careless reader, he was full of information and he liked the attention of adults. A student teacher working in the classroom at the time described Sid's reading. Sid is often so carried away in the sound and expression of the words that his ability to clarify and comprehend are neglected without someone there to slow him down and mediate between the text and its meaning. But he seems to enjoy as well as benefit from reading aloud, letting all that feeling come out while having the opportunity to go back over specific words and actions. I think he likes an audience too. The teacher attempts to focus the staff review on some central issue or problem around which she is seeking support or recommendations. She identifies areas of confusion or uncertainty in teaching this child. In this case, it was noted Jessica Howard, Sid's teacher, described Sid as ordinarily expressive and lively when talking about ideas and information, but noted that when situations called for a statement of value or feeling, such as settling a social conflict, Sid's attitude of puzzlement, his flat tone, and his urgency to conclude tended to hinder conversation or stop it altogether. She added her strong impression that Sid found these occasions as frustrating and unsatisfactory as she and his classmates did. She also brought to the group's attention a notable exception to his loss of expression around feeling, one that later proved to increase her understanding of Sid. She reported that in drama, Sid is animated and graceful, displaying a real talent for clever improvisation and embellishment. His sense of timing, pace, expression, and imagery are on the mark. From the first rehearsal, suggesting an ability to grasp easily the tone and overall idea plot. She went on to list Sid's preferred activities in the classroom: drawing, storytelling with others, cooking, designing marble chutes and mazes with blocks, making small plasticine figures for dramatic play, and building intricate constructions. Jessica described Sid's progress in reading, writing, math, social studies, and in science. In all areas, she emphasized his breadth of understanding and inattention to detail. His writing is fluent to the point and expressive of his own opinions, but marred by enormously untidy handwriting. Jessica illustrated Sid's broad understanding with an example from math. Sid often creates his own processes for solving certain computation problems. In order to add 27 and 8, Sid would say, well, add 3 to the 7. That makes 30, so 35. His approach frequently leaves implicit such steps as the compensation of subtracting 3 from 8 in the example given. These details can trip Sid up unless someone recognizes his unconventional procedure and explains to him how his invented approach fits in the number system. Jessica noted Sid's pleasure in these explanations and that he puts them into good use. In reading, Sid prefers a book such as The Hobbit. Holy cow. That offers him a whole world to explore in a landscape made for heroic adventure. She confirmed the teacher's observation that the pace of Sid's mental travel is rapid and his attention mainly focused on the action. Covering the terrain in giant steps, he often overlooks key details because he's so absorbed in the unfolding drama. He is grateful for the adult support in sorting out the story. Typically, another teacher designated chair for this review summarizes the presentation and offers any available historical perspectives or records. Other teachers who know or who work with the child as then invited to offer specific additional information. Questions and comments from all participants extend the presentation. If any colleagues have more formal observations of the child, these are presented and discussed. Again, the chair summarizes and now invites recommendations for the consideration of the presenting teacher. Recommendations may start out as broad and open, but will move over time toward a workable action plan. The review of Sid led to this. Participants affirmed Jessica's willingness to trace the perimeters of social situations for Sid and suggested that this approach be used more intentionally and consistently. Even using the vocabulary of mapping out in these situations might usefully connect her efforts with Sid's own talents for internal mapping of a large picture or context. The group suggested that mapping itself may indeed be an apt metaphor for one of Sid's most reliable and preferred ways of knowing and learning. Since mapping is a way of forming knowledge across disciplines in timeline, scientific classification, and mathematical patterns, SID might be encouraged in these directions. To expand the repertoire of classroom dramatic activities, so useful to SID, the group recommended choral reading, radio plays based on books, and lip syncing to popular music. To increase SID's access to express but bounded feeling and imagery, the group recommended more deliberate engagement with poetry and music. The group stressed that SID needs time and occasion to find and make his own connections. A classroom with adults available to mediate his daily social contact with others is already an invaluable support to him. Most importantly, his staff review shifted the focus from SID's awkward social relations in language and mounting frustrations to his strengths, skill in large-scale thought, pleasure in problem-solving patterns, and intuitive vision, to undergo a formal process which allows a teacher to see a child's strengths much more clearly is a transforming experience. Jessica's year-end report to Sid and his parents reflects the benefits to both Sid and herself of the insights gained in the staff review. Sid's term has been predictably full and productive for him. He continues to invest in his projects with energy and enthusiasm. His relationship to the group has stabilized, though Sid has still has ups and downs in his capacity to be careful of and more attentive to who and what is around him. There is a general ease in addressing Sid and an appreciation of his capacity to be helpful in group projects and to generate good ideas. Sid himself is less self-excusing about difficult incidents, though his pattern continues somewhat. He is more articulate and outspoken about how he is feeling, and certainly more aware after the fact of how it contributed to the difficulties. On the whole, Sid has a good, steady, visible place in the group and a variety of associates to choose from for his activities. The session ends with a critical discussion of the process and a formal reminder of the importance of safeguarding the privacy of the child and the family. Staff review is one way to take seriously teachers' hard-won personal knowledge of children, to reflect on it sincerely, and to make it available in public. It provides the opportunities for teachers to think more deeply about the heart of their work, and it works against stereotypes and simple explanations of any type. I like this because it's providing time to respect the expertise of teachers, and it is validating to that, right? When we rush through the day and it's like we survived the day, if we don't have some kind of way of reflecting like this and perhaps sharing with other teachers, then it's hard to keep growing. Pat Carini argues that each person is and remains an ultimate mystery. She has in mind both the complexity of the human experience, the contradiction, oppositions, and dazzling array of patterns and themes that mark each human life, and the ways each life embodies humanity's universal quests. She reminds us that each person mirrors all people, and that each is also a unique and specific expression of life's longing for itself. She draws our attention to the depth and complexity of each life, the dynamic nature of a life being lived, always in construction, forever part of the matrix of a larger humanity. Carini helps us to recognize that when we observe persons, we are both the seer and the seen, and that seeing ourselves, being aware of the unity embodied in our observations is critical if we are to avoid blindness and profane vision, the reduction of the observed into objects for use. The person can be illuminated, she says, but finally the person is never fully disclosed. This is as true for others as for ourselves. There's simply no single dimension that tells all there is to know about any of us. Staying open to mystery, to the recognition that there is always more to know and more to be, is to allow students their full humanity and to stay alive as a teacher.